bring up Ian Cheney, maker of this film. Come on up, Ian. We'll also bring up Karen Fingerman, director of the Texas Aging and Longevity Consortium, et cetera, et cetera. Anna Hardy-Finger, co-director of the Grace Scholars Program at the Hicks School of Social Work. Come on up. And the cheese man himself, John Antonelli. Come on up. Yeah, we got it. And John, I got to ask you a real quick question first before we get into it.
Did cheese mites come first, or did cheese come first? That is the question that we've been asking. Yeah,
that's a great question. But what I was going to ask was, what time does Antonelli's open tomorrow?
So you still have an appetite for cheese?
Yeah, I certainly
after
do.
that.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah, 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock.
I should open the shop outside right now.
You really should. Yeah. So at 11 o'clock, Lee will turn the key to open the shop, and half of these people will be standing there tomorrow. That is definitely a movie that makes you want cheese, I would say. So Ian, before we get into the rest of the discussion, how did you and Robin come up with this sort of notion for what you wanted to make a movie about?
Sure. Well, thanks y'all for sticking around. Robin's a food historian. I've made a number of documentaries about food in the past, and she was always curious to explore the sort of underworld of affineurs, people who age cheese. And this happened to coincide with a time in her life. She's, I don't know, in her mid-70s, where she was thinking a lot about what it was like to grow old. And so she came to me and said, could we maybe we make a movie about both those things? And I thought that was totally bananas, and therefore really appealing. And the kind of adventure that, that's worth embarking on in a documentary film, because you don't know where you're going to end up. And I love that kind of open-ended adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes for a wonderful film. Karen, do we get better as we get older?
We actually do.
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely do. So if you take a look at anxiety, for example, it's in your 20s that you're so anxious because you don't know what's going to happen. And by the time you're 70, you already know what happened.
Yeah.
So there's just not a whole lot more, Anger, just takes a lot of energy. You look at teenagers and like how upset they get, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't have the energy for that. So, I mean, all of that does in fact diminish with age. And actually that's scientifically true. There's all this research that shows that we can show your brain functioning and so on. But just intuitively, yeah, it's like cheese. It gets better.
Yeah, life just seems better. After a while, you're just kind of like, and this is a conversation that I was actually just having earlier outside with Heather. We were talking, and I was like, I was eating that cheese, and I was like, why do I not just eat this cheese all the time? Why is not every meal not just pure cheese? And she said, well, your heart would clog up with cholesterol, and you would die young. And I said, well, what's so great about living? It's like, is it better than this cheese? Because it's hard to know if it actually is, because this cheese is so. I mean, the cheese was just so good, John. It really. I'm sorry. I don't mean to amplify the point. Now, Anna, you work with people on a day-to-day basis. They're actually getting out and working with people.
I do.
On matters of aging. So has it been what Karen just said, which is very optimistic, I think, for those of us who are growing older, which is all of us. None of us grow younger. But for all of us, has that played out, that people kind of stop stressing a little bit about, or are there other stressors that impact us as we grow older?
Yes, all of it. I think we're complicated, right? Cheese is complicated. We're complicated. We get a tougher skin. We get a tougher rind as we age. We're spicier. We're a little more crusty, right? And a lot of the older adults I've worked with, despite going through some really, really challenging things, I've worked with people living with dementia, people at the end of life, people dealing with chronic illness, social issues, living in poverty, homelessness. Despite that, there's this resilience and this desire to continue in the process for most of the people that I've worked with, despite all of those things.
Even as death looms, which it does for all of us.
That's true. That's true. Thank you.
On that optimistic note, so John, I'm looking at these cheese people, and these are wonderful people, and they're so knowledgeable, but these are strange people. This is a weird batch of people. Are cheesemakers much like drummers and film projectionists, odd people?
Wow, yeah. Well, so many of those folks are my friends. So before we start going down that, Mary Quick, that was a perfect example of Mary Quick. She is a wholehearted woman, and she is incredible. And staying in the cottage with our kids when they were 2 years old was spectacular. But those, we have all walks of life that fall in love with cheese. I was an accountant before I got into cheese, and nobody likes accountants, but everybody likes cheese. Yeah. So you can imagine that career trajectory is what happens.
That probably comes in handy, that knowing how to count a lot of money when you open a cheese shop like Antonelli's, which is wildly successful.
You haven't been an entrepreneur, have you? Not yet, at least. But I would say that we do benefit from a very broad spectrum of personalities that end up in cheese, and you need that because all of those wheels and wedges that they're creating are unique unto themselves and to those people and the place and time. And so I wouldn't recommend making cheese in the dark like Jim was doing, but that's his style. So sure, go for it.
I mean, Jim is nuts. That guy, I mean, even by the standards of like the cheesemakers that we saw throughout.
I haven't met him. I've met most of the others.
Ian, that guy's nuts, right?
Or are we nuts?
No, I mean, I guess what I was saying is he was nuts, right?
No, he's not nuts. He's, he got hung up on this metaphor of the wall.
Yeah.
Because we got off on the, kind of off camera on this sort of long, boring conversation about Moby Dick. And for Jim, he describes sort of what cheese provided to him as this opportunity to kind of push through a wall, or you might say leap over a fence of things that we normally don't talk about, like our own decomposing bodies.
Yeah, right.
And how they might taste nice. I mean, is that? And not in so many words. And I guess I came to see it more as a door. Cheese provides a door to look at our lives in a new way. And I'm always looking for those doors. I mean, maybe that's the documentary filmmaking life in some sense. One of my biggest fears is kind of living an unexamined life. We're pretty good at encouraging ourselves to stay in the moment and so forth. And I work on that too. But looking for opportunities to kind of step through a door where you can suddenly look back on your own world or your own life or our own bodies in a completely new way is powerfully intoxicating. Yeah. And I think a lot of the best doors are really unusual doors. I did not know that cheese would be a door. Yeah. And Robin kind of brought that into my life, and I'm really grateful for it. So.
Yeah, and I want to get some questions, comments, any kind of from the audience, but I want to real quick have the opportunity to ask John, most underrated cheese.
Underrated cheese. That is a question I haven't gotten a lot. I would say that the most underrated cheese in my book actually is Osorati. It should be on everybody's plate.
What is it?
It's a sheep's milk cheese from the Pyrenees. And it was, you could see it in the background of one of the shots in the video, but it's a beautiful, really traditional wheel of cheese made in small farmhouses all dotted around the Pyrenees Mountains. It's incredible. It's one of our shop's most popular, but it's not well known yet.
People don't walk in asking for it. You kind of push it on them, and then they come back for more.
We just give a sample.
Yeah,
It was on the tray tonight. You'll be asking for it, whether you know it or not.
Yeah,
later.
yeah. because you're hooked.
It's amazing that you can spot specific cheese in the background of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's that.
You should have seen Kendall leaning into my ear the whole time. It was like, that one. Oh, what about that? We've been there. We've done that. It's pretty. We're lucky. We're very
It's
lucky.
probably time to go on a buying trip, huh? Looking at some of those amazing cheeses. Who do we have in the audience that has like a wonderful question or contribution to the discussion? I see a hand right back here.
I thought that they had banned cheeses with mites in America.
You thought they had banned cheeses
That
with
lapsed.
mites in America. Has it lapsed?
So it was some of the tariff type work from bringing in cheeses from other countries that had mites. Generally we're not getting cheeses that have the mites on them still. They have the caverns.
Sure.
It's traditional and it's typical in certain cheeses. They coexist together, a very symbiotic relationship. The way historically why cheese exists is because we needed to preserve as humans many thousands of years ago proteins and fats that would otherwise get thrown onto the ground. Milk wouldn't spoil, it just sours when it's raw milk, and it's got this beautiful microbiome that exists and protects it. But it was preservation techniques, and these rinds were created through this incredible ingenuity of these cheesemakers. They, as Rachel in the video suggested, they had no idea what they were doing. And even in some cases, we still don't know all of the nuances of these bacteria and such. But they are creating these beautiful rinds that protect that really important protein and fat and mineral resource that we needed as a species to move around the planet. Cheese is one of the reasons why the diaspora exists, was able to happen, because we could take these cows, generally they were sheep and goat, not cows because they were easier to manage, and move across the world, the planet, with this dried product. It's pretty amazing. So the mites are existing just like the molds and the bacteria that are also protecting. They're alive as well, and we eat them with every cheese bite.
Karen, I'm under the impression that the notion that we as human beings are single organisms is outmoded, that in fact we are complex systems of many organisms. And Anna, maybe you have thoughts about this as well, that we are in fact like almost as mysterious as these cheeses, and that we're constituted of all these many different sort of microorganism cycles.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, I think that's part of the mystery of both the subjective experience of growing stronger, growing better, having stronger emotion, which really is actually scientifically documentable. And yet at the same time, there are things that obviously are changing in directions that are both positive and negative. And so, yeah, I mean, I was just at a lecture yesterday talking about whether the microbiome, which is sort of the bacteria in your guts, is going to help explain the changes in your brain as you age.
Yeah,
And we just don't know. We don't know.
Are there reasons to think that it does? Because it seems
there are reasons
out there.
I will tell you that our knowledge of nutrition and aging is really, really weak. We do know if you exercise, it's going to help you. But nutrition, there's a lot of different lobby groups, all of which want to prove that something is good that's going on, and none of them want to prove that anything bad's going on. Whereas we don't have an anti-exercise lobby.
Right.
So we don't really know, but exactly, I mean, I think there's a good hypothesis that, yeah, there's more going on inside of us, and that's what's creating all the change, good and bad.
I think the anti-exercise lobby is just getting started in
Yeah,
Washington
yeah,
right now,
I know.
honestly.
That's the, let's,
Yeah, we'll find out what happens. I see a hand right over here. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a question or just something you can expand upon. I was at H-E-B ordering some buffalo cheese burgers, and the kid was, well, he was like in his 20s, and he said, I don't like blue cheese. And I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm like, I love blue cheese. Of course. Taste. But I started thinking, like, is that evolutionary, where the palate is more sensitive to strong taste versus, not strong taste, like it's toxin? Have you discovered that in your evolution or expertise?
Is it cultural? Is it biological?
I know you were
Yeah.
talking about history and evolutionary.
Yeah.
Like, did you come across anything about palates and strong cheeses versus
I'll leave it to the scientisty people. And also, I mean, I know that, at the beginning of life, we taste sweet more than we taste other flavors, and that evolves over the course of our life. But it also is one of the tastes that remains at the very end of our life, which is kind of interesting to think about. So, but you guys may have more about the science behind that.
I was gonna say, you probably know about palate, at least anecdotally, like who walks in the door and, what are they looking for?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy. And the question was, is it flavor preference on your palate? Is it genetic? Is it just individual? But really, what we see and what we talk about in the flavor of taste and the science of taste is that each palate, all of our palates, are unique unto ourselves, and so each one of us would experience sweetness very differently. Salt, for instance, my mom, if there's one grain of salt on food, she'll say it's too salty. And my mother-in-law will take the entire salt shaker and pour it on and be like, "Do you have more salt?"
Right.
And so this, it's an amazing thing. And we also, as you age, you actually lose sensitivities on your palate. So younger children are more susceptible to bitter compounds, which is why broccoli is not their number one choice. But eventually you kind of age through that, and you desensitize to some of the flavor profiles as you get older, as your taste buds die and regenerate at a slower pace. So it's pretty amazing. Great question.
I could definitely see blue cheese being a tough one, like when you're young and you have your taste buds are just really raring to go and it's just too much.
It's a punch in the face.
Yeah.
But not all blue cheeses are made the same. So some are. You saw that guy with the shiv-looking device there, turkey thermometer poking. That was a blue cheese, and so the fewer times they puncture the wheel of cheese, the less blue exists. So it's more mild. But definitely take blue cheese with a bite of honey, and after a few weeks, you're gonna fall in love. We do that with every cheesemonger. You'll eventually love blue.
So when that guy's at work again, go back, give this advice and say, "I got this from one of the world's most eminent cheese experts," and he'll say, "You are a weirdo." I see a hand right over here.
Hello, yes. There's a lot of beauty in the film and a lot of history. And we see, the continuity of cheese throughout the ages, as well as in Japan, a new development. So my question is, how often does a totally new cheese come along? I don't mean we put dill in our body. I mean a completely new process, new type of cheese. What are we going to name it? How often does that happen? And what does that mean?
That we think is new, because we don't really know most of the history of cheese, probably.
That's a great question. We geographically will see more kind of creativity in the New World cheeses. European cheeses have name control designations, and so you see more historical context around the cheese-making history, whereas cheesemakers in new parts of the world, Kendall and I got to eat cheese with a cheesemaker in Nepal, in Kathmandu a few years ago, and they're creating their own cheese because it's in a style of Italian cheeses, but it's made with milk 30 miles outside of Kathmandu, which is unto itself, even though they might call it something similar to, say, Parmesan, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's totally new. So these inventive cheesemakers making cheese around the world is just more and more and more. And so we'll never get to taste them all, which is incredible. And so keep an eye out, especially for the American original cheeses. They're incredible.
I think we're going to let John rest his voice a little bit as we take some questions, maybe that are more about the aging part. We also have eminent experts.
No one wants to hear about aging.
Over here. People want to hear about cheese. This is what we find out. People want to talk about cheese. But I see a hand right over here.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. There's a lot of science in the film, but one of the things that I loved is it was almost like a window into a sensual life, which I really loved. And I wonder if you'd want to talk a little bit about kind of how cheese is not a very intellectual process, but a somatic process.
Yeah, so the question is about cheese as being kind of an avatar of a sensual life, a life that is not as much about contemplation, but somatic, I think you said. So Do you guys have thoughts about this? The aesthetics of cheese and life and experience?
Can I say, like I was commenting earlier when I first, because I got to preview the film, and I somehow was expecting, they said documentary on cheese, that it was going to go through and explain to me, there's the way, there's the this, and it was really philosophical, and it just was really thought-provoking. It's like what you're saying, it was just a very different experience, and I wanted to ask you both how you did that and how you found all these people all over the world to convey all that. I mean, they conveyed art. You did such an amazing job. So I don't know if you have an answer, like it's a...
Thanks. No, yeah, I mean, it's, I do think that sensuality and the kind of, the physicality of people making cheese, I think Stillwagon in some sense sort of turned us on to that with this kind of invitation into thinking about cheese as a body. And so in some weird sense, as cinematographers, we kind of started to see like cheese and people's hands as kind of the same thing, and wanted to capture a little bit of that. I think we could have even done a better job of it. But I personally found that idea, just really provocative. And it's, I think, not an unhelpful idea as people in general like living on the planet, to remember that we're essentially inseparable from the rest of the planet. There's really no point at which we're separate from the air that we are all breathing together, our cheese air. It's hitting our lungs, and it's for better or worse in COVID times. But we're not separate from the planet, and I think that that came through very viscerally in people's relationship with the cheese. And people touch cheese in different ways. I mean, in rural Georgia, there were very few contraptions and very few kind of opportunities for Galina to separate herself and her hands and the microbes on her hands that were in the water and in the meat and in the soil and so forth from that cheese. And that's what I think engenders, some of that, the flavor of that cheese. And I suspect that's a line that all cheesemakers, especially in Western countries, are navigating, having to kind of abide by certain rules to keep the cheese something they can get approved and sell, while also trying to bring out its kind of essential sensuality. And I love that, that tension. I mean, I think that's in some ways like another way of thinking about our time, is sort of walking the line between being a technological people and being a human people with like decomposing cheese bodies.
As kind of a recovering clean freak, like looking at this, I get the impression that like being a clean freak and being like a cheese maker, they kind of don't go together, because there's a certain amount of like accidental bacteria or the microbiome of the world, of the place, of your hands, of your kitchen, that kind of gets into it all. Does that seem right? I mean, you guys are very scrupulously clean. I'm not saying you're not.
No.
What's clean?
But you know what I mean.
Yeah, what's clean
I would
and
say
what's dirty?
They're essentially harnessing the power of those bacteria and those molds, and they're creating an opportunity for a symbiotic relationship again, and so it's healthy.
Yeah,
it really when a cheese has been damaged or hurt, and you can sense it in an aging room, and you can smell.
How can you sense it? How do you sense it?
In Georgia, you heard her knocking on the wheel of cheese, so you can find that if there's microbial activity that's not expected, you might hear fissures, you might hear a hollow thud. You can smell those caves. Each one of those caves has a unique aroma. And I can our walk-in is not quite the same thing since we're not aging the cheese, but I can go into the walk-in and I can smell a distinct difference than the day before. And these cheesemakers are doing that 365 days a year, so you can pick up on these subtle notes. But all of those bacteria are actually going to protect us from the bad stuff. And that's really when you have good bacteria from a scientific perspective, it protects the milk and the curd and everything from the harmful stuff you want, and that's what they're trying to do. So all of that stuff, there's bacteria on the udders of the animals, and when you're thinking about industrialized cheese, they try to kill all that stuff and make the milk taste the same in every batch, whereas artisanal cheesemakers are focused on capturing the essence of the milk from that day.
Yeah.
And so that's what, it's an amazing dance.
Yeah, it really is. And there are cheeses that are like fresh mozzarella and, so forth. I want to talk to you guys because we're having an opportunity to interface with some scientists and some people who are going out and putting science to practical use at a time when, I don't know, frankly, Karen, when you said that people haven't studied this, but nobody studied this kind of stuff before, it's mind-blowing to me. All these great scientists, people haven't studied this kind of stuff. We want science to continue. There may be forces in this world that don't want science to continue. We might be sort of sensing those right now. Just since we got great people gathered here, how can people be sure that that we don't head into some kind of new dark age? What can we do, you guys? Can you let us know?
Well, one thing I should say is that people are studying it, but what I'm telling you is there's still a lot more to know.
Yeah.
If we're going to get to the finish line, there's a lot more to know. So given what you were saying, I do want to, as part of the Texas Science Festival, encourage you to reach out to your senators, your representatives, express your enthusiasm for science. Let us keep moving forward. Let us figure out what cheese can do for us that's going to make us live longer. And so, yeah, that would be the main thing, is make sure that you express the enthusiasm you've got here tonight with the people who might be able to really help continue and make a difference.
And you can participate in research for things like Alzheimer's disease and Lewy body dementia and other types of. What's that? By eating cheese, I don't know, but you can
That would
maybe
be awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
Write your senators about that.
Right.
Yeah.
More money for cheese, please. But yeah, there's lots of opportunities to be involved in research on aging and in all kinds of ways.
We can't take science for granted.
Well, I guess I would also add that, there's a kind of an apolitical aspect of science, which is that it's very fundamental. Science was invented by humans. It wasn't handed down to us from anyone else. It's a very human endeavor, and it's rooted in curiosity and wonder, and it takes often the forms of observation and experimentation and the gathering of empirical data and the processing of that data and the testing of hypotheses. But on a fundamental level, it's about asking questions, and I think looking for doors for looking at our world in new ways. And I don't think that's something that we need to think of as merely the purview of paid, funded scientists. We should have that. But I think the more we can imagine science as the practice of all of us, I think the more we can keep its spirit alive.
Well, let's keep the spirit of science alive. And Ian, tell us what you're working on next as a filmmaker.
We've just finished a film called Observer, which is a film which is premiering in a few weeks, which is a film in which I take mostly scientists all around the world without sort of telling them where they're going and asking them to tell me what they see, which is a little bit of an inversion of the usual way we make science films, which is to go to an expert's lab and say, tell us all that you know. And this is instead, what is it like to see the world like a scientist?
That's
and
such a cool
there's other
concept.
Artists and others and stuff like that.
It's called Observer.
It's called Observer.
All right. So we'll be looking for Observer coming around the bend. And I wanted to just thank everybody who's here. John Antonelli, of course. You guys can stop in and see John and his team at Antonelli's Cheese Shop over there in Hyde Park. Anna Hardy-Finger, who's out here doing great work all the time, working with people. Karen Fingerman, who you're dead on, and I love everything that you've said tonight. And of course, Ian, who made this film. And I want to thank all of you for being here and for all your contributions to this discussion. Please join us for the next Science on Screen, which is that one that you saw. This is about the hummingbirds. It's coming up in a little bit. We love being able to do Science on Screen with the Sloan Foundation, and we love being part of science education. Thank you all for being here. Drive carefully. Thank you so much.
You know, but we were also trying to figure out, it didn't take long, kind of exploring this conversation. Some people were just like, okay, and other people said, oh boy.
Why are we wait so long?
Yeah, finally, yeah. So there's this whole sort of relationship building that goes into it, which I actually see as part of the value of the work. So Kendall went to social, took some classes, so it gets written up in the final report, hang out, and all the conversations that happen along the way, those have value too.
I got my.
Cheers. And thank you for the recommendation.
As I'm getting absorbed in the maelstrom here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. This was so much fun. But anyways, nice to meet you.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for
thank
coming.
you so much.
I just think that was a really beautiful film. And regarding the people, I thought this was the right work ethic. Good job sort of lovingly sharing us these wonderful people. Cool. Thank you.
I love it.
Wait,